Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bryan City Council meeting for Monday, March 6th, 2017. First item on our agenda this evening would be the approval of the minutes from the February 20th council meeting. You should have those in front of you. I would entertain a motion.
I move we accept the minutes as given to us.
I'll second.
Keith?
Yes?
Judy?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the hearing of public concerns, and not seeing anyone from the public here this evening, we'll move on to the next item, which is an ordinance. Pat, would you please number and read?
Ordinance number 4, 2017, an ordinance providing for the transfer of funds for the city of Bryan for the month ending March 31st, 2017. The transfers are from the 1% tax fund to the 101 general fund for $400,000. The second one is from the 1% tax fund to the street fund for $100,000 for general operating. The third one is from the 0.5% income tax fund to the police and fire debt retirement fund of $100,000. And the fourth one is from the fire department fund, $200,000 to the police and fire debt retirement fund for a total of $800,000.
Any questions regarding the ordinance?
I make a motion to suspend.
Second?
Sorry, Keith.
Who was second, Keith?
Okay.
Tommy?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Motion to approve. I'll second.
Carrie?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the hiring of a volunteer firefighter.
I don't see Doug here, so you have in your packet the letter from the fire department, Doug Poole. With your permission, I would like to appoint Brett D. Distro as probationary volunteer firefighter with the City of Bryan Fire Department effective today. Brett has successfully passed his background investigation and his physical. Brett will be taking his firefighter class beginning August 2017. In accordance with the volunteer pay ordinance, Brett will be in range 1 and $8.50 per hour and will serve a 1-year probationary period. Then Doug couldn't make it, so we'll try to get that through.
I make a motion, I'm sorry, Judy.
That's all right.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
I'll second.
Tommy?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes. Item number 5, which is some discussion on legislation, Senate Bill 331. Rhonda?
Thank you. You have in your packet some information that is pertaining to Senate Bill 331 that was passed in mid-December. Governor Kasich signed this into law. It actually was piggybacked on another bill. But this is going to become effective March 21st of 2017. So we wanted to bring this to your attention tonight. We are going to be presenting you with legislation on the March 20th meeting that we'd like to have put in place before this bill goes into effect on the 21st. And we've had a short time frame to get our hands on the information with the bill and to find out what's going to be required. But what this pertains to is the small cell telecommunication facilities that are going to be utilized here in the near future. And part of the background for this is that there is currently a federal legislation in place for public utilities such as telecom communications, cable, to bring large cell facilities into our municipalities. But this is going to allow small cell facilities to come into our rights of way. And so how that's going to affect us is that by this bill, these companies are allowed to come into our right-of-way and attach their small cell telecommunication facilities to our light poles, our, not necessarily municipal electric poles, but other poles and structures that are within our right-of-way. With regard to this bill that was put in place, part of the background for it is that there is a push, you've heard of 3G technology, 4G technology, well, there's going to be a push to 5G technology. And as you can see in your packet, there's some statistics that more than 2/3 of the adults between 25 and 34 are already in wireless households. Landlines are becoming a thing of the past. Most wireless technology is going to be 50% wireless by the year 2020. And so we really don't have a choice in this matter. The law that was passed in Ohio is a little bit more restrictive than the federal law in that it puts some timeframes upon us when these applications come in from these companies that have these small cell telecommunication facilities. We have either a 60-day window if they're going to be attaching onto an existing structure to approve their application, and a 90-day window if they are going to establish a new structure to attach their small cell facilities. Now, there is a permitting process that has to take place, and that's part of the legislation that we're going to bring to you on the 20th, that will require them to fill out an application. A permit process will take place. We're hoping that these companies will come to us and have some discussion first before filing the application or the application for the permit, because we have such a short time frame in order to approve that. But we had a meeting, the mayor, Bryan Wieland, Nate Gardner, and Al Sullivan and I met to discuss some of these, the protocol with regard to this bill. And we'd really like to be proactive and kind of have in mind what we may be able to recommend to these companies as far as attachments. We can't prevent them from coming in. We can't discriminate between companies from coming in. And so really what is the issue for us is the aesthetics, because we don't necessarily like the idea of seeing one of these telecommunication boxes on every single pole or every single corner within the city. And so we're hoping that we can encourage some commonality in where these locations are being placed, and work cooperatively with these companies that do make application. So some of the things that we can do, if they provide us with a request to place a small cell facility, if the application is incomplete, we can extend the time for that application process, but we only get one bite at the apple, so to speak. And that we have to tell them whatever other information we need, or if there's anything incomplete in their application, we only get one opportunity to tell them to correct it before the clock starts ticking and we have to approve the application. Some of the things that we can't do, we cannot ask them about their business background. We cannot require them to have bonding facilities to maintain these boxes or the small cell facilities that they put in place. Let me go to that page. We cannot discriminate between the providers that have functionally equivalent services, and we cannot enact ordinance that are prohibitive or have the effect of prohibiting the wireless services from coming in. If we do deny an application, we have to submit in writing why we are denying that. And as you can see, we also cannot deny an application over concerns regarding radio frequency emissions. There are fees that we can assess. The application fee can be up to $250, but we have to justify the basis for the application fee based on time that Bryan, myself, Nate, or Al put into review of the application process. And then there is also a fee of $250 per unit that can be charged for these small cell facilities that are placed on poles.
That's one thing we've been looking at. We've been working with the utility office to try and see, we don't necessarily maybe want these on electric poles, because if the people have to climb the poles, if the workers have to climb, they really can't climb around them. What the problem is gonna be is we actually need to find a place for these people to exist. You know, whether we look at traffic signal poles, you know, do we find a place for them to go there? We need to set up a criteria if they wanna put their own pole up, how many feet away from a certain utility. You know, we can't just say, no, we can't do it. You know, we have to find room. So, you know, we've got a lot of work to try and get done here with this permit application in a 2-week time period to try and snowball something together that's legal, effective, and gives the people a place to work. Now, one saving grace we do have is we can require them to do a little additional engineering. Let's say they want to hang on one of my traffic poles, which if they do, that's fine. We can make them have an independent third-party engineer come in and look, make sure the foundation will hold it, make sure the pole will hold it, you know, make sure that the structure is able to contain this. And these units, they vary in size. I've seen some that are the size of a bread box, and I've seen some that are maybe like a small satellite dish. But every single one of them has a power unit on the side of it, which is similar to our traffic control boxes, which could be the size of this podium here for the most part. So, you know, we're worried about aesthetically, is this gonna hang on the side of a pole up high in the air, kinda like, I guess it'd be Wilson and Allen Street. We've got our traffic box mounted on the side of that pole on the southeast corner. Or is it gonna sit next to it like most other traffic signals? And again, I'm just using that as an example so you can kinda get in your mind what these facilities could look like and where we need to try and find a place for them. Now, we've had several applications in the past as well. One of them was in front of the hospital. They wanted to try and find a place, and there just physically was no room in the right-of-way. By the time we took the street out and we had 3 foot left between the sidewalk and the curb, we had a water line right underneath there. You can't build on top of the water line. So that's gonna be a struggle, and I think we have to give them an alternate location within 50 feet, I believe it is, of that location. So it's gonna be a cumbersome process here. So, you know, we're not, I don't wanna say we're struggling, but it's gonna be interesting to get this all hammered out so we can get it to you in the next 2 weeks.
It can't run through planning and zoning. Planning and zoning is exempt from that, and the ordinances that have been established, the first one was from Cincinnati, and that's kind of a sample one, but both Ohio Municipal League and the OMEA are working on sample ordinances to try to get this in
Right.
before the deadline.
We used to be able to restrict with the planning and zoning code on the height, a structure height. If they wanted to be above 35 feet, we could say, well, it just doesn't work in that area. Well, that's against the law now. We can't do that. So, you know, we all need to work together with them and come up with a process so it's fair for everybody.
If you look on the information we provided you under stealth deployments, you can kind of see there, behind the street sign, there's a box that shows what one looks like, and then up on the top of the other light pole is another type of box that they might put on. The stop sign on the next page, and you can see there's all different styles that, you know, we may be subject to looking at.
How many companies are involved? And so each company will have their own box?
Correct.
So there's no sharing in this, it's.
The way I understand it, it's a private company that will put up a tower, and then they will lease their tower to users of Verizon, Sprint, or whoever
So
else.
there could be multiple users
Right.
of one.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
they're
don't foresee.
generally subcontractors.
Yeah, I don't foresee 5 of these units hanging on one pole. I see somebody putting one in, then Sprint, Verizon, whoever else will purchase the rights to utilize that service for their users, is the way I understand it'll work.
But, you know, there's competition, so there could be two
Right.
subcontracting companies that are vying for the space in the right-of-way. You know, we
Correct.
don't know what we're going to get as far as applications.
Could be 1, it could be 100, we don't know.
Right.
And they have to tell you how big these boxes are before you tell them where they can put them?
We're hoping that's part of our permit process, is that they will give us an idea of what they intend to put on the pole
Okay.
or the structure, whichever we're talking about.
Now, the installation is theirs to do.
Right,
Do we have any say in the quality of the installation?
not necessarily, and the worst part is, we really, you know, she's touched on bonding. If they close their doors and there it's hanging on the pole,
So,
we either have to take it down and run the risk of touching something that's not ours, or just leave it hang there. If, you know, the comment was made during this webinar we had, let's say they put their own pole in, and it's 3 foot off of a water line, and we need to go dig through and replace that water line. Well, if we're digging a sewer right now, if Tyson's digging it or we have another contractor, we call the utility office. If it's their light pole, they come out, they clamp onto it, they hold it, they make sure everything's safe, works perfect. We don't know who some of these people might be, and if they're gonna be able to hold the pole, and if it's gonna fall down, we go buy it. So it's a struggle. You know, it's really gonna be a struggle to make this all work out.
I think AMP kind of lobbied against it at first, but realized it was kind of a losing battle, and so this is what we're going to be dealing with, and they're trying to help draft some legislation as well. I guess there's possibly some litigation that may come about, maybe an injunction at the 11th hour, but I don't really foresee that, so I think we need to get some legislation and present it and have something put in place so we can establish our protocol here.
So we'll be back in 2 weeks, I guess is what we're saying.
Yes. Any questions?
No, I got to that page before you was talking about, and I mean, it's you shall and you shall not.
Right.
That's the way that whole page reads.
We say
You
yes,
know,
sir, yes,
so-
ma'am, and.
Yeah, so we're hanging in the wind on this. I mean, we don't have any control over this, basically
The
whatsoever.
only control we have is our permit process, and
Right.
we can't
But-
be extremely restrictive on our permit process.
Right,
Has to be
right.
fair for
That's what I
everybody.
was gonna say, you can't drag it out, you
No.
can't make it hard for them, you can't
Nope.
throw anything in there.
We
that's
have, we
gonna-
shall give them a place to occupy.
Right, right.
We can see that they have a PUCO permit, but other than that, we really can't ask anything about their business. I mean, if it's a fly-by-night, you know, that's the way it is. We have to treat everybody the same.
How involved is BMU with this?
They are
Very.
involved.
Very
They
involved.
have, actually, as Bryan said, we've had other applications before that we've had these kind of discussions before. Al Sullivan and Nate Gardner have been wonderful to work with, and we are passing around the legislation for them to give their input, and they're very involved.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Item number 6 on the agenda is 2016 annual report from the street department. Mr. Engstrom.
Good evening.
Evening.
Make this short and sweet. We'll start with last winter. Between plowing, hauling, and spreading the salt, we spread 900 tons of salt at a cost of $49,725. And those numbers are messed up.
So 3 in
We'll round up $50,000 and applied 23,295 gallons of brine at a cost of $1,810.02. And now, on the next page, I'll explain the similarities and differences between rock salt and brine, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Seems like every time we spray brine, I get phone calls, people mad because we're ruining their vehicles, ruining the streets, ruining the fields. Brine is rock salt and water. It's the same thing as sodium chloride. It's the same thing you put on your french fries, same thing as table salt. That's all it is. But it's already diluted in water. You know, road salt costs $52.96 a ton, and we buy that from Morton Salt. And the brine costs 7 cents a gallon, and we buy that from ODOT. There's 1 ton of salt to make 1,000 gallons of brine. And if we salt the salt route, which is the main roads, Main and High, Portland, Center, Wilson, Union, Mulberry, and all the roads in and around the schools, we'll spread between 40 and 50 tons of salt. So that costs us between $2,000 and $2,600. If we spray those same streets with brine, it's between 4,000 and 4,500 gallons of brine. So that's 4.56 tons of salt or 5.13 tons of salt or sodium chloride at a cost of $280 to $315. So there's a lot of savings when we use brine. And we don't, you know, the reason we started using brine was for the dustings and up to an inch of snow, because the brine will melt that. And we're only putting, you know, 4 or 5 tons of salt actually on the road. I know it looks bad when we spray it because the sun's out, the streets are dry, and then we go down and spray the brine and everything turns white, or there's white strips down the lanes of traffic. So it looks like we're wasting time and money, but that's the whole point of it, is to pre-treat. That way when we do get the snow in the middle of the night and we only get a ½ inch of snow, we don't have to go out and salt and dump 40 or 50 tons of salt on the road. Because the brine will take care of that little bit of snow or ice. And like I said, brine is sodium chloride and water. You know, it's not calcium chloride, it's not magnesium chloride, which some ODOT facilities use that in the state. We don't use it. All we use is rock salt and water. You know, and then there's another misconception that the brine is from the byproduct of fracking, which is the wastewater pumped out of the wells, which it is called brine, but that's not what we're spraying on the road. I guess, does anybody have any questions? I'm sure you've all been asked why we do it, and heard the same rumors that it's 10 times worse than rock salt, which it's not, because that's what it is. You know, if you think about it, if we get 2 inches of snow and dump 40 to 50 tons of salt on top of that snow, the snow melts and turns into water and mixes with the salt and turns into brine.
Yeah.
So it's the exact same thing. It's even stronger because it's not diluted. When we spray brine, it's 23% salt in water. When we dump that much salt on top of the snow and it melts, there's a certain point in time where it's almost 100%. So it's actually better. It just looks worse when we're spraying it on dry streets. Questions?
If
I
there's
know I went
a
through that
larger
pretty quick.
snowstorm than an inch coming, you still use the brine to begin with?
Yeah, we'll pre-treat, because we can pre-treat and then it'll keep the road wet underneath the snow or ice, and then we plow it off. We don't have to dump 50 tons of salt after we plow, because there's already salt underneath. And if you try to pre-treat with just salt, 50% of it blows right in the gutter as soon as you put it down, and the other 50%, the traffic blows it off the road before it snows. So you can't really pre-treat with rock salt.
How much in advance can you put the brine down? Like you say, you can do it the night before, could you do it a day?
We do it, yeah, you can do it 2 or 3 days ahead of time.
Okay.
And that's usually when we do it, is during the day before. They're calling for any freezing precipitation. And we don't do it before, if they're calling for rain and then snow, we're not gonna spray brine, because the rain will just wash it all off and waste it.
Do we still go up to Montpelier and get it?
Yep,
We
from
take
the ODOT
the
garage.
truck- Yeah,
Yeah.
the truck, we only have the one truck that spreads it, correct?
Right,
And that goes up there and fills the tank and comes back.
right. We have a 6,000 gallon storage tank out at the shop, and we'll run up. The truck will hold 1,500 gallons.
Oh, okay.
On days when we're not using it and have time to do it, we'll go up, fill the truck, come back to the shop, dump it in the storage tank, and keep doing that until it's full. And then when we're spraying, because it takes, almost 4.5 truckloads to spray the salt route, we'll fill off our storage tank instead of keep driving to Montpelier to get it.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? Okay. Moving on. Here's our list of employees, which there's 2 of them on there that aren't with us anymore. Jason Staler, he went to Montpelier Wastewater Treatment. And then Mike Spielman from Recycling resigned. And we'll have a couple more to add for next year. There's the routine jobs that we do throughout the year. I guess one number to point out was last year we cut down 65 hazardous trees off the terraces in the city. And those are pretty much the same list of jobs as last year and the year before that. Of course, the city leaf pickup. And last year we used 1,250 gallons of emulsion in our Durapatcher filling potholes, which that emulsion we buy from the county, out at the county garage. And last year, we took 3,192.6 tons of garbage to the landfill at a total cost of $236,018.28. It's usually June, July, and August are our busiest months, so I see September is up there too. June's usually the busiest because everybody's doing their spring cleaning. And then the average cost per ton is $73.92. But that includes the tipping fee, the fuel recovery fees, and the base rate for the weight of the garbage. And that's the same information, just in a different graph. And last year at the cemetery, we had 39 burials and poured 20 bases for the headstones. Out of the recycling center. See, the newsprint and magazines were the highest weight in pounds, 304,000, followed by cardboard at 291,000. Appliances, tinplate, and plastic, which plastic was the biggest money maker. We had a total of 914,160 pounds brought in, and we sold that for $43,954.69. So we're still not making money. That's it. Any questions, comments?
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Homeyer with wastewater. For your final annual report.
Yep. And you guys all have a copy of the annual report. It's more technical, and as I've done for the last several years. I'm gonna basically have a slideshow and kind of highlight some of the things that we did in 2016. First, does the staff, the 6 people there, we've got 103 years of combined experience out there. And as you can see, there's starting to be some gray hair too. We didn't really tackle any really big projects this year, but there's always a lot of PM to do and projects. The guys were busy doing some fabrication stuff. In this here, we're making covers for our roll-off hopper. When they come and pick that thing up, they tip it up and it's got to pass the paint filter test, stuff that goes out to the landfill. So we took care of that problem. And kind of in relation to that, in 2013, we were required to do a stormwater pollution prevention program. What that amounted to was mapping out the way the water falls into the catch basins, locating any potential risk where we could have stuff other than the stuff that falls out of the sky going into the storm drains, the clean water. And we got that taken care of, and now we do a quarterly inspection for that and document that. And it's one of those things that seemed like when we're doing it, didn't really make a lot of sense, but now going through it, it makes sense because there were a few places that we saw potential that we could have a spill, end up in the stream, and make a mess for all of us here. And in fact, that roll-off hopper is placed in a location so that if it leaks, there's under drains there. We're reusing old sand beds so that the potential of anything leaking actually goes to the head of the plant. This is Wilson Street Lift Station, and that was put in 1990. And we've had issues, done repairs, and we finally bit the bullet, and we put a new enclosure, a new disconnect, that's to the left, you can't really see it there, and new controls, everything for it. And the guys even kind of customized it. We have an issue there where the pumps will get a little bit, pull in things into the impeller and plug. And what we had to do a lot of times, we'd go over there and reverse the wires to make that run in reverse to spit that stuff back out. So guys came up with a good idea. They put a reversing switch in there. So it's something that can happen easily, and they do it as a preventive maintenance type thing. And I think, let's see, we replaced those submersible pumps in 2008 at that lift station. So it's in pretty good condition. Here Josh is fabricating some stainless steel access panels for our condenser on the sludge dryer. There's plastic media that's in there, and it's something the guys came up with, an idea and a way to make it happen that just saves a lot of work, and it's safer to do. And they're out there probably about 8-10 times a year taking that media out, cleaning it, and then also the under drains that are below that. This one is a work platform that the guys built. That's at the primary settling tank. That right there is it's called a beach. That's where the grease that's collected in the plant at the head of the plant goes. And they came up with this idea. And of course, anytime we got to work on anything, it's usually freezing cold or icy. So actually what he's doing right here is jetting a line that's plugged up. As you can see, it's just a good idea. It's just something that we've done without over the years. And I guess as you work around this stuff, you come up with ideas to make your job more efficient and safer. This was a budgeted project. Actually, this is the Rachel Heights lift station. There's one, it looks very similar out in front of Greystone. Those were put in was it 96 and 97? And they've worked really well. As you can see, there's kind of a doghouse. It's not a real good picture there's a picture of the guys working on it. And what we did, it was a budgeted project. We replaced the rotating assemblies, which amounts to a bearing housing and the impeller. I don't know if you can see the wear on that impeller. That should have nice clean edges. And they still worked well. We weren't really having problems, but just thought it was kind of a preventative type thing. And then the benefit of it is that the guys, since they've done that, we keep track of the hours on these lift stations. And just about every lift station has 2 pumps. And the pumping time on those dropped dramatically. So, I mean, you aren't saving a lot of electricity, but you're saving a lot of wear and tear on everything else by not running them as often. This is the capacitors, the starters for, I don't know if you remember last year, we had the transformers for the blowers, the aeration blowers. They're large 150 horsepower motors. One of the transformers got hot, and luckily it didn't catch on fire. So as a preventative, we changed those transformers. And then this past year, looking at a little further, we had one of these capacitors fail, so we changed those out too. And those blowers and that equipment, it's heavy duty stuff, and we anticipate that being there for years. This is a shot of, we made a temporary air header for post-air at the treatment plant. Several years ago, we had add air header in our chlorine contact tank to get the DO up high enough to meet our permit. Well, with the project that's going on, that chlorine contact tank is going to be demoed. It's going to go away, so we, for a little bit of effort and not a lot of materials, the guys designed this aerator and put it in a structure. It's a structure that's going to remain there to see if that would possibly do what we need to do for our project coming up. There it is after we added air. Well, the bad news is it will not work, and we ended up having to add a post-air tank to our project. The good part is we know going into it that that's what's got to be done, so that at the end of the day, after we spend all this money, we're not going to be out there going, oh, if we don't have enough DO to meet our permit. It's just, we spent a lot of time this past year getting ready for this project that you guys have heard about. Wes and I went to several plants looking at equipment, had meetings with Arcadis. The lab did a lot of X-ray testing, and to come up with numbers. The more data that the engineers have, the better job they can do and make sure we get what we need without not having to overbuild things, but also be able to take care of any instances that come up. For several years, we've had to do what's called biomonitoring. Biomonitoring is actually using living organisms to test the water. At this point, the guys are checking it upstream. What we have to do is check the upstream water and the actual water that leaves the plant. And they increased our sampling from annually without any kind of number to hit to quarterly starting in 2014. And it's a pretty stringent number. We went to different meetings and we tried to get them to back off on by them being the Ohio EPA to back off. They wouldn't do it, so we were kind of holding our breath every time we'd have to run these quarterly samples. And I just got a picture. There's one of the little organism. It's a little water flea is one of them. And that's a fathead minnow. And it's a 7-day test. We collect the samples 3 days during the week. And then this all goes to a contract lab in Lima, Alloy Lab. And there, it's a pretty technical test. It's hard for me to even understand all the numbers that they crunch and come up with. But in doing that, they're able to use those water fleas and fathead minnows to test for toxicity, and that specialized testing calculates acute and chronic mortality, growth, and reproduction. They're even weighing these things to see how much they grow and counting the little ones that are reproduced. The good news is we did well on those, and because of that, it set a trigger that we're cut back to now just doing it twice a year. And actually on one of the species, only once. So so far it's worked out good. One of the programs that we have here, we've had, gosh, since the mid-'80s, we're required to have a pre-treatment program. What that does is put the responsibility of certain industries, depending on if they fit certain criteria, flow, the types of industry, and it puts it on us. So we have to develop limits and permits for these industries, and part of that is we go out and set up the samplers and sample them. And then the industries also, we sample them twice a year. They are required to do, at a minimum, quarterly sampling themselves and do self-monitoring, basically like we do to the Ohio EPA. And I'd like to say that the industries in Bryan have been great. There's nobody trying to pull anything over. But the industries, they all want to keep a good reputation. They have everything to lose from that, but they are truly people of our community. The last slide is, this is a program that was started in 2009, and we have what's called, we've had that actually before that, a mercury variance. The standard for mercury is so low, and there's so much in the environment and in these old sewer systems that it's not cost effective to build a apparatus that might be millions of dollars to remove, a half ounce of mercury or whatever a year. So we have this variance that we've been working under. They up the ante by saying, well, you need to do what's called a mercury PMP, a pollution minimization program. So in 2009, we started at the plant and kept working upstream, grabbing samples out of manholes. And in fact, we've sampled almost 500 times since then. And it's not a cheap test, it's about $50 a pop. But what we found out was basically it led to the dental offices, and the dental offices installed amalgam separators, and that has made our number lower somewhat, but you gotta say these sewers in this town, some of them are probably over 100 years old, and back in the day when they did use mercury, it's a heavy thing, so when things get shook up and they clean sewers and stuff, it can break loose. I did write down a number, let's see, in 2009, our average, this is for the plant effluent that we sample at least monthly, was 1.235 nanograms per liter, and a nanogram is a billionth. And for last year, it was 0.899. So, but that, like I say, if you have a scouring of sewers or something, that number could definitely come up again. So we are, like I said, the water quality standard is 1.39, and we are right under that. And just as a kind of a measuring stick to go by, I calculated that out and I had Wes check it because he's the smart guy. And what it amounts to is 1.39 nanograms per liter would be 1 second in 44 years, to give you an idea how small of numbers we're talking about here. That's all I have. Any questions?
Rick, I understand that the discharge from our plant is actually cleaner than the creek in which we're discharging into, is that correct?
Most of the time, I would say that's the case. Yeah.
Other questions?
Well, and like I said, I've left you guys the more technical stuff there, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Nice
you very
job.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck on your retirement.
Yes. We do have one addition to the agenda, number 7, which is a rescinding of a motion. Mayor?
Yeah, at the last meeting, Tyson, the street department recommended that we hire Brett Brown. He's decided to stay in his previous employment, so we need to rescind that motion at the 2/2017 meeting to employ Brett Brown at the street department. So we want to rescind that, get that off the books.
I move we rescind.
Second.
Keith,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Tommy,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, going around the room, Chief Willis, anything further? Mr. Engstrom? Rick, anything else? Wes? Mr. Berner? Mr. Day?
I'd just like to remind people who are out on the streets running and walking, please have something bright on to be seen. That's it.
Mr. Moore?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Judy?
Nothing.
Carrie? Down here, Pat?
No, sir.
Ron?
I don't, but I think so.
Oh, I just got, when's the date, Rick?
March 31st is my last day.
Okay. And there'll be a party at the wastewater treatment plant, furnished by you and the crew?
Russ is making cake.
Wes is heading that out.
I sincerely appreciate it. I'm pretty low key guy.
So you're just gonna get on your horse and ride out in the sunset, huh?
Who's that masked man?
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you have anything further?
Good job, both reports tonight.
Yes.
Very interesting and informative. I might say that last week, thank you for filling in as mayor for 3 or 4 days. Had an opportunity to attend the APPA rally in Washington DC, and we were there for over 70 municipal utilities from the area. We're from all over Ohio. Members of AMP and OMA were there, and the attendance was great, and the information that we got there was great. Washington DC is still in a mess right now. You don't know what way it's going, but everyone is trying to get a handle on what is going to happen and so forth. So it was interesting and glad to be there and get some information. We did have an opportunity to visit Representative Latta's office and also Senator Portman's office and get our ideas in what we thought should happen, but we don't know if that's gonna happen or not. And I know Rob was there from Hampton, and he also, I think you went to Brown also for me in that area. So we got our information to Washington. Now, whether they bring it back and we get any good things out of it, we'll wait to see. But everyone's looking, everyone's wanting to see what's going to happen. So we were there for the night of the State of the Union, so to speak, and we were in an area where we could watch it on the screen. And the feelings out there is kind of mixed of what's happening. Some are for it, some are against it, and so forth. But I think it kind of turned positive. A lot of things that might have been negative before are starting to look positive. So we'll see what happens. It's too early to tell. But thank you for allowing me to attend, and thanks, Rick, for covering for me. So.
The only other thing I just thought of was, is that, this is, to my opinion, just a fair warning to Joe Public out there that's, you know, watching this on TV and things like that. I read an article, was in the Toledo Blade this last weekend or last week, where is that your governor of the state of Ohio is now gonna start, cutting back of giving, generating money for schools, municipalities, things like that. So, he wants these, organizations, school or municipalities, to look at your own backyard. Look, see what your balance is, look what your carryover is, look what your services that you're providing, and things like that. And he's saying it's up to you. I'm not giving you, basically, I'm not gonna be dishing out any more money for all the things you guys do. It's gonna come right back to the city, back to Joe Public. You're the one that's gonna have to support if we need extra money for this or that, or the schools, you know, it's going to Joe Public. And so I don't see anything right now, as far as citywide, that is causing us any concerns or anything like that, but just be aware that some things could come down in the near future, maybe not in the near future, but in the future, that could really stir the pot, and the people are gonna be pointing their fingers at the schools or the municipalities, and by far, it is not from here. So, coming from here, it's just gonna be a lack of funds from the state. So you get an opportunity when some of these things start falling in line, make sure you get a hold of Mr. Height and people down there to voice your opinion, because it's definitely, there's some things coming that's gonna change our funding in the future. Okay?
They already cut the local government fund in half several years ago, and then they're further going to cut that to get to the Medicaid to balance their budget. And then they're gonna base, they say they're gonna give money back to the locals, but if you have the ability to raise taxes, or they don't feel that you've raised taxes enough, it's gonna be up to the cities to do it, to get, we're not gonna have the money, so.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're also encouraging to spend your reserves, and that's,
Yeah, right.
you gotta have your carryover.
Yes. He doesn't wanna spend his reserves, but he wants you to spend yours.
Yep.
And the other thing that, I don't know that we've talked about either, but the other thing is happening, or they wanna propose, is that we take our income tax and send it to the state. Instead of collecting here and things like that, we send it to the state, and they will look this all over, and they will then determine how much you're gonna get back. So we could take a bath on that as well.
Charge us 1% to send it down there, and send it back to us quarterly.
Yeah, right. With amount that we have no idea what it will
But
be.
that's all up in the air yet,
Sure.
and it's something to watch, but it's in the budget.
Yeah, right. So that could be, again, some less income coming back into the city. So, anyhow, thanks.
Tommy, I appreciate you saying that, because with my affiliation with the schools, we've seen that coming down for quite a while. Schools have been struggling and really trying to be fiscally responsible, trying not to go to the public for more money, and it's becoming very difficult. More and more money is being taken away, and we're expected to do the same things we've always done.
Right,
So it's
right.
a very good point.
Yeah.
As far as sitting in for those 3 days, I was happy to do it. I'm just glad there wasn't anything exciting go on while I was the interim mayor there, or the temporary mayor, but I'm glad to sit in, and I think my hand will recover from all the signing of my name that I had to do, but it was good. If there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Keith,
Yes.
Tommy,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.